When we look at the challenges in digital signage and the things that BrightSign are actually doing. So one of the things we've seen is the rise of the, quote, integrated display, which is our smart display in the commercial world. So, whether it's people term it the SoC. We've looked at that, and it's interesting for a section of the market that is, I think of it more as kind of the digital to analog conversion as you go into retail, and people that are using printed signs or those stretched fabrics. With the cost of those things, to change them out every 3 or 4 months, with the LCD pricing coming down so far, people want a replacement for that. So they don't want to have to worry about connecting a player. They just want to kind of replace that fabric or light box with a display. So it's a really growing part of the bottom, what I'd call the bottom part of the market, the very simple part of the market. So what we did is we went out and looked around and said, how can we build the best product for that, using our technology, and then looking at who's the premier builder of displays. So after doing a bunch of research, we found TCL. So TCL is literally the world's largest manufacturer of displays in the world. World's largest. They build 40 million displays a year. Crazy number of displays. They make their own glass. So their glass factory makes the glass, it feeds over this bridge, and it goes into the production line, and they feed the production line. So we went to them, they're based in China, and said, hey, and they make commercial displays also, and they make displays for a lot of other brands. As I was over there a few weeks ago, walked through their factory, and the number of brands that come off their production line is spectacular. So we talked to them early on and said, hey, you would be like the perfect partner. Very high quality, lowest cost basis, because they build the glass, they build everything. It literally, raw materials come in, they build the glass, it feeds in, and boxed sets come out at the bottom. So, for us, it was adding our technology to an already existing great technology for display to come up with something at this bottom of the market, not in a bad way, but just that broad part of the market, to replace a lot of just simple signage today that's mostly the analog. So replacing light boxes, replacing these backlighted fabrics, replacing printed materials, because the cost of printing materials, shipping the materials, and getting it changed out is just too expensive. The whole idea of interoperability, that's one of the things that drove us towards a solution, because since we didn't have a solution, people would buy other devices that had this capability, use our devices for and then they have this heterogeneous environment, which is hard to keep up with, right? So we think this allows people to take advantage of our ecosystem and have a consistent, fleet of players, if you will, both built-in and non-built-in. The other thing that is interesting about our platform versus a lot of other platforms that do this is, one, you can now span the whole range. You can build super high-end, 8K video walls, interactive displays, all the way down to the simple signage, all with a single platform, a single operating system that goes across that. So we put a lot of effort in that, and we think this makes it easier and better interoperability within an institution because it's all running the same platform. Yeah, I think AI is going to have a big impact on digital signage. I think the early part of AI in digital signage is actually going to come in on the content side. So if you think about content for digital signage, it's one of the more expensive areas of digital signage. And if you look at a lot of digital signage content, yeah, some of it is highly tuned, but a lot of it is kind of what I would call ambient content. Is like, I need something that looks like this. I need a background image of a cheeseburger. Well, I can go pay a graphic artist to go search a database for an image of a cheeseburger, and they can make me a file that has a cheeseburger. Well, I think AI and the generative AI for content will come first, where you can just say, hey, give me a picture of a cheeseburger. And you can do this today for services as cheap as $10 a month. It gives you a picture of a cheeseburger. And it's in the right format. You can say, oh, I want a full HD version of a cheeseburger. I've got a full HD version of the cheeseburger. I think that's going to be the first part of AI that we're really going to see taking over is really as a tool to help people save costs, because doing that, you can get as kind of many of those images you want for $10. You can't even have the graphic artist walk into the office for $10. So I think that's going to be the first impact of it. We're then going to see it move into other parts of it. So I think the next phase of it will be using AI to create the experience. Imagine that you could, on our platform, instead of having to go in our tool and build a presentation and drop in all the content, and I want a zone here, I want live TV here, and blah, 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 that I could just type that in or say it, and all of a sudden it builds the experience for me. I think that's going to be the next step, is automating experiences. And maybe it just puts placeholder for the content, and for your AI or your video folks, you drop in the content, and now you've got 80% of the experience, and maybe you go fine tune that. So I think those are the first two steps. Going more into the, let's be situationally aware, that stuff, and kind of, recognizing faces and doing all that, it's been out there for a while. It's never really taken off. I think most people have realized that it didn't give the impact that they really want. I think the AI engines are getting better, so it could be more interesting going forward, but I still see it as a little bit later stage, where I think the early stage and early wins is going to be productivity gains on how you build experiences and content. Yeah, the supply chain last year, 2022, was a miserable year. Well, what we did is we redesigned all of our players to move to what we call Series 5. It's the 5th generation of our player. And when we designed that, supply chain was one of the key criteria in designing that. So all of our Series 5 players have been designed and negotiated with our suppliers to eliminate supply chain. So we have no supply chain challenges. They're all gone. We've redesigned it, we set up supply relationships. We have lots of scalability in our supply chain now. When we did the Series 5 design on every one of the units, we looked at every major component and made sure there was a supply relationship, that we could get consistent supply, lead times being rational. So we negotiated that all up front before we even designed the components in. Before, in the semiconductor industry, that was always kind of a handshake agreement, that if you design my component in, I'm going to tell you the lead time. As long as you order those components at lead time, I will give them to you. In 2022, that was not the case. We had many orders. They would cancel them and then charge us extra fees to try to bring them in. So all the new suppliers, we negotiated agreements where that's not true. I mean, the supply chain, I think, was a big wake-up call for everyone, because, we had a lot of integrators trying to put projects together. It's like, I'm missing this one piece. Well, that one piece means they can't do the installation because the customer's not going to pay them for it. So I think a lot of people started looking, kind of double-clicking into their supply of suppliers, and like, hey, what's the availability of this? What's the lead time, and what is the probability of getting it, right? So that's why, like I said, with our Series 5, it was a complete redesign with supply chain high on the list. And when suppliers don't supply you with the ICs, it's enormous, because we can't build product. If one IC on this board of 1,500 components is not there, we can't build it. Even though it may be a 35-cent part, you can't build it. So it was a wake-up call, I think, for the industry, and at least for us, we took a lot of effort to make sure that we have better supply chain management. Whereas before, it was always a handshake. People never thought about it because it just worked.